We're going to talk about a classic Star Trek episode, Trouble with Tribbles. But before we do, I'm Tom Scioli, author of Jack Kirby, The Epic Life of the King of Comics, and Godzilla's Monsterpiece Theater, coming in October from IDW Comics, issue 1. And today, Monday, right now, is the Final Order Cutoff for issue 1. Basically, it just means that the comic book stores have to tell the distributor how many copies of a comic they want. And so the Final Order Cutoff, that's when that number is finalized. So if you let them know before the Final Order Cutoff, which is today, if you let your local comics retailer, your local comics store, or wherever you buy your comics from, if you let them know that you want a copy, then they'll know to like add one more copy for you.
It's probably the most the media that I'm looking forward to the most.
You got good taste.
Very pumped, very pumped. I was singing today, I was like, up from the depths, 30 stories high,
Godzilla, 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 and Godzuki.
Somebody they cued in the Godzuki part.
It's not anywhere without Godzuki. So yeah, Trouble with Tribbles. When they remastered the Star Trek, which I think that might have been 10 or 15 years ago. No, more than 10 years. It might have been 15, maybe 20 years ago. They remastered it. They did sort of like a special edition of like all the old Star Trek episodes and kind of updated the special effects. Now, we can get into the pluses and minuses of that in another episode. But what ended up happening is when I went back to like watch Star Trek, I wanted to check out these versions, remastered versions, and I tended to focus on the episodes that focused on sort of like spaceship combat or like battle scenes and stuff. So I'd watch episodes like Balance of Terror or something where it's kind of like, space combat and stuff because I felt like those would amplify. So I didn't really revisit a lot of like what I think of as sort of the classic episodes, my favorite episodes, ones that are sort of character based, like Trouble with Tribbles. But I, finally sort of, made my way back to Trouble with Tribbles.
Dude, I have only, I never sat down and watched it front to back before. I would see it on, Fox 53.
What, just like the original Star Trek series in general?
Just Trouble with Tribbles.
Oh, Trouble with Tribbles,
the series, it seemed to have been on a lot. Mm-hmm. And when I was little, the Tribbles scared me.
Interesting.
Because
they're like gremlins.
After watching it now, Alien, the distress signal, and picking up a creature on the ship, and the multiplying creature, even the fur of the Tribbles or Gizmo's color.
Yeah, well, they kind of make a Gizmo, the sound they make is kind of like Gizmo's song. And I would say this is the best Star Trek episode. There's other ones where you get different things from it, but to me this is the signature one, and it is it's almost like word association when people talk about the original Star Trek. Tribble
it's
is
the first thing
words.
That comes to mind.
Because it's sort of kind of cute and lighthearted, I always kind of took it for granted. The other thing, the Gremlins thing is definite, but the thing that it was reminding me of lately, and I think maybe the reason I wanted to check it out, it reminded me of the spotted lanternflies in Pennsylvania, because they're sort of back around. And the thing you always hear about the spotted lanternflies is that, okay, there's no predator for them, here in Pennsylvania or in the United States or whatever. So they are just going to proliferate. And it's the same thing with the Tribbles.
Same exact thing. And with the lanternfly too, you always hear people say they're going to introduce another predator that's horrific. They're like, you know what? If we introduce these super killing hornets, they'll take out the lanternfly.
Now, there's an actor in this Trouble with Tribbles episode who looks exactly like young John Lennon. Just give him and I don't know if maybe that's how he got cast, or maybe that guy there. Maybe he played John Lennon in a later TV movie or something. But give him a pair of round, tiny glasses.
Please do the deal with it. His circular little glasses.
But that guy could not look more like John Lennon. When they introduced Chekhov, the idea was they wanted somebody, they wanted to get, the young crowd, so they introduced the guy and gave him, a monkey's wig,
He like kicks Davy Jones off the monkeys.
Now this episode, like it's season 2, so it really is a sweet spot because you've gotten to know the characters, and so the interplay is great. Like it's got a nice sort of mystery and stuff, but the comedy is rock solid. It is laugh out loud. And Shatner's performance,
it's unreal. Like his fucking even near the end, I like laughed out loud when he's got the Tribbles in his hand. He's like the John Lennon guy. He's like he keeps like shoving them at him.
Yeah. Now there's like a line because he's talking to this like sort of bureaucrat and stuff, and his delivery and that Shatner delivery.
Oh my god!
He's like, I've never insulted a member of Starfleet, and then he starts walking out the door, and then he's like, until now. Like the pause there. You could drive a truck through that pause, but it, again, laugh out loud funny.
When he's under that door and all the Tribbles are falling down on him, his fucking like deadpan look.
Because it just keeps going. All these Tribbles keep dropping on him, and then like it just goes and goes, and then it like fades to black for commercial, and then fades back in, and they're like still falling. And the other thing is there's all those jokes about William Shatner's hairpiece.
Oh yeah.
So like as these Tribbles are falling on his head, it's like, oh, William Shatner opened his closet full of hairpieces and they're dropping on his head. Oh, what's that on your head? A Tribble?
I was thinking the same thing because when he's under there, they're like delayed throwing, and he kept looking up, and I was like, oh man, whoever those PAs are throwing those Tribbles down are gonna get fucking fired because they keep beating him on the head.
As soon as they call cut, he is gonna give them one of those like reamings like he gave the guy who like asked him if he could deliver the line like a little faster. You sicken me. This guy who shows up who brings the Tribbles onto the ship, and I mean, it's been a while since I saw this episode. Because again, it was one that I saw a million times when I was a kid, but haven't revisited in a while. And so, in my mind, that guy was always Zero Mostel. So like when I see it and I'm like, oh wait, he looks like, but that's not Zero Mostel. Like that would have been a real coup to get Zero Mostel to make an appearance on Star Trek back then.
I love seeing how many Tribbles like are all over the ship.
Yeah, when he pulls out that first Tribble, and then Uhura is like in love with it instantly. That guy who brings the Tribbles, his outfit, it looks like he took it off of my Nana's couch.
It's covered. He looks like he was from like Dune or something.
Yeah. He does look like Baron Harkonnen. Yeah. There is like a great moment where Scotty gets a really great moment where it's Scotty and Chekhov, and they're at the bar, and there's Klingons there, and I think this is maybe only the second episode with Klingons in it.
Whoa!
And the Klingons are trying to like goad them, and so they start insulting Captain Kirk. And then Chekhov's getting real angry, and Scotty's like, simmer down. And then they start insulting the Enterprise and saying like it's a garbage scow and that it actually is garbage. And then Scotty, like you see his temperature rise, and like he's keeping his cool, but you can see him starting to break. And then he like punches the guy out, punches the Klingon out.
He's like, whoever works on this ship is a real pig.
Yeah.
He's like,
And so then that scene is hilarious.
Oh my
God. Like the way, that the reversal there. But then later on, when they're explaining what happened to Captain Kirk, and then Captain Kirk and then he's saying, and then, the Klingons started to insult you, Captain. And then he's like, so that's when the fight you started? That's when you threw the punch? And it's like, no, sir. And then you see like Kirk kind of putting 2 and 2 together, and then it was only when he insulted the Enterprise, and so Kirk's kind of like, and you see a little bit of like Shatner bringing himself in there too, because you can imagine like his ego and stuff.
At the very end, when they beam like the Tribbles onto the Klingon ship, Kirk's like laugh in reaction at the very end is just great. He like slaps like Scotty on the stomach.
Yeah, because for a moment it's like it's a comedy show. It's a comedy show, but it does have this kind of cool tension and mystery and thing through it, even though this is one of those like sort of lighthearted change of pace episodes, because there are episodes that are a little more dry and a little more serious, and this still does have the sort of dry serious moments in between, like they're doing analysis and this and that, but the comedy is so great. And
So
I think this is
good.
where like the show, this is what makes the show eternal. And then that's the energy that like the better Star Trek movies have. Like they make
Yes.
sure they bring a healthy dose
That we
of
love.
that. And yeah, it is almost like a waste of this ensemble if you don't do some comedy, because they
This
play off
ensemble
each
with
other.
comedy is
Yeah.
like unreal. William Shatner, his comedic timing is just killer.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and his like reactions.
Yeah.
And the fact that he takes himself so seriously
Mm-hmm.
to get the piss taken out of him a little bit, it's just like...
Nobody dies in this episode. That's how you know it's sort of like a lighthearted change of pace. But again, this like lighthearted change of pace ends up being the essential episode.
It's the first one I think of when you think of Star
Yeah.
Trek. But yeah, when I was little, this episode would be on TV a lot. I never watched it from front to back. And I was scared of them because I was worried I'd find like their mouth would be somewhere and it
Right,
would
because
have teeth.
you don't see their mouth anywhere.
It scared the shit out of me.
Yeah, and I was reading a little bit about the guy who wrote this episode. I think his name's David Gerald. He also worked on Land of the Lost,
Oh my
like another one of
God.
my favorite shows. So I'm like, okay, I gotta read up on this guy because he's tapped into some great stuff. Yeah, and anyone with the Klingons, it's always fun to have the Klingons.
Did
But
you say
yeah.
this is the debut of the Klingons?
No, I think this is like the second appearance of the Klingons. Again, it's hard to say anything about Star Trek because, like, I just sort of growing up, it's like there were people, like, I never thought of myself as a Star Trek fan because I knew people who were such, like, huge, like, so it's like I can't possibly be a Star Trek fan because I don't know for certain if this is the second appearance of the Klingons or not. But saying, oh, I think this is the second appearance of the Klingons, watch out, the wrath of Khan, the wrath of like of Star Trek fans is coming for the Total Recall show.
When I was younger, like my buddies and we would think of like the Star Trek, like we were Star Wars fans.
Yeah.
So we would think of Star Trek fans as like, you know, like
what's your deal?
Yeah, the nerdy nerds.
Yeah,
coming from a nerd,
right?
Like,
where it's like I realize, oh, I am a Star Trek fan, and I do love Star Trek. I can't help it if there are people who've like built their entire lives around Star Trek. Although that phenomenon seems to have faded somewhat, just because there's just like more competition. There's more like things that you can be that sort of like insanely into.
Was Star Trek like the original fandom? Like,
I mean, I mean, of course, there's fandom that predates. There's science fiction fandom which predates comic book fandom, but Star Trek was certainly like the early days of comic conventions and the early days of Star Trek conventions are kind of like you know, they're intertwined. They're kind of simultaneous and. You know, there's some turf war. There's some complementary stuff going on. There's turf wars and whatever. But I think this is our lighthearted change of pace episode, just like Trouble with Tribbles was Star Trek's. And yes, thank you, Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz for you know, starting Desilu Studios so we can get this like wonderful show. I'm Tom Scioli, author of Godzilla's Monsterpiece Theater, which is coming in October. The Final Order Cutoff date is today, Monday. Ask your comics retailer to set aside a copy for you.
I'm Matt Zeoli.
And yeah, we'll see you, in a galaxy far,
Yeah,
far away.
yeah.
What's the, we'll boldly go where no one's gone before for the next episode.
Luke brings a Tribble to Dagobah, infiltrates Yoda's like, what?